I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, "Oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build a billion-dollar company?" It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut, and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build a billion-dollar company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that.
But I just feel it's what if, I guess I was thinking this, which is what if this how are we going to get there, this puzzle, this map we wish so much that somebody would just deliver to us, what if it's so close that we are constantly just tripping over it? Like, what if the portal, the door to all of it is the simplest yet most untapped thing that we've ever done, which is just to fully believe in it. And then it's like, we were talking about Sherry Salata before, and she said to me, when people say, how do you become successful? You were executive producer of Oprah, every successful person over the last 3 decades, them. And what is it that you all have in common? And she said, it's not what are you doing, it's who are you being? It's who are you being, right? And I thought so much about Oprah reading your book because you talk about her in here, but I feel like what you have in common with her is there was a resonance, it was a vibration, it was a knowing, and it was a stepping into that knowing, and it was just that, and so it is. And it's like, and from there, the next piece of the how was revealed because you stepped in. But what do you say to people when they're like, no, it can't be that. It has to be that there's some formula or some degree or some add whatever you want to the list of things I need in order to accomplish the thing, which will never happen. How do you help people really get that believing in it really is there for them?
Yes. And what you just described, the last 5 seconds, and what you just described is literally somebody talking themselves out of their own calling. It's us talking ourselves out of our own calling because it's more comfortable to do that, because all those things, right? And but again, oh my gosh, I feel like it comes at the price of the person you're born to be, right? And here's what I'd say to that question. I think it's easy to go, oh, yeah, that girl Jamie, yeah, she was a Denny's waitress and she bagged groceries at a grocery store and pushed grocery carts in and all those things but maybe she just got lucky or whatever, right? Maybe she just like all those things. And here's what I've learned and here's what I believe. I do not think that where you come from determines where you're going. I don't think that any of the opposition you face in life, whether it's people rejecting you, people not believing in you, like I've gone through so many years of rejection, and I share the story in this book of, 3 years of like I created this product, and I had this dream, right? Because I have hereditary rosacea on my cheeks, and I could never find makeup that would work for it, and I was working as a television news anchor. I knew nothing about the beauty industry, and took a big risk and poured all of our money into this business. And I finally created something that worked for me, and I really thought this was going to be huge. But I also wanted to use a different type of model than the beauty industry was typically using, because I had this realization, right, that my whole life, because I was like, why can't I find something that works for me? I never realized nothing out there, no other products work for me. And in realizing, wait a minute, okay, my whole life, all I've seen is images of models where they all look, they're photoshopped, airbrushed on commercials on television and in magazines. And I've never actually seen anyone that has rosacea on their face and on top of it, how do you even know if they're wearing the product they're advertising? Like all these things. And I had this big,
such a good point,
right? Where I was like, okay, for me, and I know you talk a lot about this too, about, your why and your mission for, why so many of us identify the why behind what we're doing. And it's interesting because I realized early on that when I created this product that finally worked for me, like, yeah, of course, that was a part why of why I did it. Wanting to help so many other people out there that couldn't find anything that worked for them, make their lives easier and better, was also part of my why. But what I did early on, just to share this tangent for a quick second, in case it adds value to anybody listening, because I feel like so many people in their careers, when they're going after their dreams, I feel like they'll identify their why, but it just sounds good. And it's actually not like deep enough, right? Like they'll say, oh, I want to do this because I want to buy a house, or I want to help my kids with college, whatever it is. And those are great, awesome whys. And they sound so good. But like, unless it's deep, 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 deep to your core, it's not going to be strong enough to prevent you from quitting when times get tough, right? And I've done a lot of things wrong in my journey, but one of the things I did right was early on, I just peeled back those layers of why am I? And by the way, going through 3 years of hearing everyone say no to you and getting down to under $1,000 in my bank account and not knowing if my company was going to make it. Like when you go through all that opposition, when you have no proof of success around you and you have no one saying this is going to be amazing, you're going to do so good. And like, every time I checked in with my gut, I felt like I was on the right track. But what also kept me going was like, I really did the work early on of peeling back the layers on like the why, deep, deep, deep beneath the why. And for me, it was like, oh, because I had this realization, because no other makeup would work out there. I had this realization that I wasn't just doing this to make a great product. It was like, oh, I'm going to launch this company. I'm going to use women that are models of, and men and every gender identity of whatever age, size, skin tone, skin challenge. I want to use all kinds of models and call them beautiful models and mean it, right? And because what I realized is, oh, in this journey of trying to find a product that worked for me and I couldn't, I realized my entire life, even since growing up as a little girl, every time I would see these images in magazines, like I'd see them and I would aspire to look that way. But they also always made me feel like I wasn't enough, always. Right. And my deep why, like for this not giving up after during years and years and years of no's, was like, I wanted to shift culture in the beauty industry around inclusivity, but also around the types of images used as models and the definition of beauty. And I wanted to do that for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and like every grown woman who still does. Yeah. And like, that is what drove me through all of it. Anyhow, it was so many years of opposition and of hearing no's from anyone. And to your question on, well, what's the difference? But like, what would you say to people who are like, oh, here's the deal. At the end of the day, and this is after going through so much, like we could talk for 50 million hours about the stories in this book that I've never shared. But like, one of the big things to share is that I believe, and I believe every single person has what it takes to go from like underestimated or facing opposition or filled with self-doubt in their own head, to go from unstoppable. I believe every single person can do it. And I really, truly believe the first criteria for that is that they need to want to, right? They have to want to. And a lot of people just decide, oh, for all these reasons, this isn't possible for me. I believe step one is deciding you want to. And after that, it comes down to mastering belief. And that's hard. But when I look back on my journey, when so many people are like, how did you start with nothing and build $1 billion company from your living room? It's like, yeah, I worked really, really, really hard. Too hard, frankly. I worked really hard. And I didn't give up. Like every time I got knocked down, another no. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, I cried myself to sleep so many nights, but I didn't give up. But to me, that is just like the price of admission for being an entrepreneur that keeps a business going. For me, the single biggest thing, and I would say this to everybody, despite what their dream is, but like for me, building a $1 billion business from my living room, the single biggest thing I did right was like, I made the decision to believe that I could.
Yeah.
And that is why I wrote this book, because I believe that, it doesn't matter if someone's dream is to get on the PTA board and decide they like the other women. I don't know it doesn't matter what your dream is. To me, learning the steps of and being on the journey of breaking through, learning how to break through that self-doubt, tuning it out, tuning out other people's opinions, and truly, because so many people can't even hear their own intuition, truly learning how to hear your own gut and tune into and learning to trust yourself. And then learning how to truly believe that it's possible for you to become all that you are and all you're called to be. That I believe that's possible for everyone. And that really is why I wrote the book.
Yeah. And you do such a good job of giving that belief over. And I don't know how you do that, because it's such an esoteric and it feels so far away. But I think because your story is so vulnerable and you're so exposed and it's so something we can see, like from the beginning of the book to the end, you're like, oh my God, I could actually see those steps and how she was able to step forward into each new challenge. You really do feel like you grow as a person just by reading it. The thing I find with all of our listeners, and 90% of them are women, this feeling of imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't believe that I would ever want someone to give me money or pay me for something. Like I think I'm a fraud. Like there's so many people better at this thing. Like, yeah, I want to start an Etsy shop, or I want to teach yoga, or I want to make my own makeup line. But Jamie's done that. Bobby Brown's done that. Someone else is making candles. It's this feeling of shame. What if I put this out there and like, who am I to like take up anybody's time? That is just so prevalent.
Yeah.
And
so prevalent.
I don't even get it, honestly. Like just the amount of rejection you just shared, plus you articulate it in the book, and also being a little girl who is like in this sort of different kind of a situation where you were adopted. Like I think so many kids would feel intrinsically rejected, and this is the feeling that it's so easy to go to that place of I'm not enough and I'm a fraud.
Talk to me about the idea of who we can become. What is it you want us to believe?
Yeah, my biggest hope, prayer, intention is that each person closes this book and is better able to hear their own gut and trust themselves. And what I mean by that is, I think what Jay-Z said is so right? But I also think it's not a victory, because we're told so many times, keep going, don't give up. Like since the time we're little kids, we watch, even if we don't play sports, we watch movies and kids are taught, just don't quit, don't give up. I actually think it's a failure if we don't ever learn how to tune in and hear our own gut and our truth and our calling, and then we just keep going and don't give up anyway, and we're not on the right path. And what I mean by that is, since the time I was a little girl, I'd watch Oprah in my living room, and I just had this knowing, oh, I want to interview other people. Like my whole instincts, Tom, I literally just want to ask you questions right now about you and Lisa, who I'm obsessed with, and like that's my who I am, right? I love other people's stories. And so I knew that's what I always wanted to do for my career. So, eventually that's what I did. I was working as a journalist. I was working as a television news anchor. And when I got that problem, and I mentioned earlier, that skin problem, I was at this moment in time. And I think, hopefully everyone in Impact Theory community, like wherever you're at in life right now, at this very moment, I believe everyone has a knowing inside of them. I don't think it matters if they have a faith or no faith. I don't think it matters any of that. I think everyone universally has a knowing or a truth inside. And I think most people never learn how to get still and hear it. And most people, if they do get still and hear it, they're going to know right now, live, while they're listening to you and me, are they in the right job they're supposed to be in? Or are they playing it small? Are they in the right relationship? Or are they in it and dimming their own light because of fear that maybe they'll be alone. We all have a knowing, right? And, you know, what I'll say about the idea of giving up, leveling up, all of that, I think it's so important that, you know, in that moment where I had and again, let me just say, there's so much I did wrong, and I share all that stuff too. But one of the things I did right was when I had this gut feeling as I'm sitting there with this skin problem, this gut feeling, oh, you're supposed to figure out how to create a beauty company. Even though I knew nobody in the beauty industry, had no connections, had very little money because television news does not pay very well. I had that knowing, right? And yet I was sitting there in my dream job. Like that was my dream job since the time I was a little kid. So I think sometimes like knowing when to let go of a dream, knowing when to quit is actually a victory too. It's actually as important as when to keep going, right? And so with Jay-Z's quote, the genius thing we did was we didn't give up. I think that applies only if someone hears their truth and says, all right, I have this knowing I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing. And when I look back at this journey of 3 years of constant rejection, down to under $1,000 in our bank account, literally getting knocked down over and over from all of these beauty retailers that I put on a pedestal, and I couldn't understand why they were telling me I wasn't the right fit for them. Every time I would check in with my gut, right? And maybe so many people out there can relate to this because you feel like you're doing something you're supposed to be doing. But like for me, there was no proof around me that my idea was right. There was no traction in my business. There was nobody saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me buy your product. And then I'm going to the beauty retailers and they didn't believe in the brand. And everything around me was saying, you're wrong. And the easiest thing in life is to confuse that with the truth. And I think the only way we know the truth in life is when we get good at getting still and hearing that inner knowing. And so for me, every time I would get knocked down, I would just check in, get still. And it's hard sometimes because a lot of people out there, they have not heard their own gut in a long time, right? Because we have like our friends and family that are worried about us if we're, or they're seeing everything through the lens of their own life and their own fear and their own experience or lack of experience. And then we have, in my case, experts who I valued so much saying like, you're not the right fit. You're not, not literally saying no. And as you know, as I shared in so many stories in the book, they said so many other crazier things that all but basically said, like, it's not just a no now, it's a no forever. Right. But I think the victory is learning to get still and hearing your knowing and then trusting it. A lot of people don't trust themselves. And I think that is what keeps people inside their comfort zone in life, which I think when you stay in your comfort zone, it chips away at your soul. And you end up talking yourself out of your own truth and then never becoming the person you're born to be. Not to get all dramatic on impact theory, but that to me is the biggest. And listen, to me, it's not about the outcome. Oh, here's how to create $1 billion company. It's about the journey of, are you stepping into all of who you are and the person you're born to be, and how do you do that?
All right. That was amazing. But now are you ready to get into the weeds on this idea?
Let's do it.
In your book, you talk about developing your intuition. How do people develop their intuition so that when they need to turn to it and they learn to be still and listen to it, that it actually gives them good advice?
Yeah. The very first step is to pay attention, right? Listen, we are so busy in our lives right now. And so many of us with all the stuff going on with the pandemic, with this, with that, with our job, and then frankly, at the end of some days, all I want to do is scroll Instagram or like yesterday, eat candy hearts for Valentine's Day. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to like actually put in the work, but I believe that it's so important. Like if someone's going to do anything and you hear so much about morning routine or this or that or whatever, taking 5 minutes a day and just starting building that muscle. And at first it may make no sense, right? Especially because so many people are out of practice, but literally getting still, even if you have to just go sit in a closet, leave your phone out, just go sit in a closet and just see what you think. And can you hear your own truth? And another thing I would say, just as a real fundamental level, is to look back at your past, because I believe it's something we build over time if we pay attention, right? And I can say that most of my mistakes I've made when I look back is because I didn't trust my own gut and I trusted my mind instead. And my mind was able to say, oh, these are all the experts. They're experts for a reason. They're touted visionaries, and they're telling you to change this about your product packaging, or they're telling you to do this about, and they have a proven track record and you don't. So even though, Jamie, you have some gut feeling, like my mind won. And when that's happened, those are some of my biggest mistakes. And I think looking back on that's important, just to like break it down at a real fundamental level. So many of us have dated the person we know is not right for us. You know what I mean? But we know, right? And I can think of times where I was dating a guy who I was so into, and like his phone broke and he disappeared. And I knew he's lying. I knew it, but I didn't want to know it. Right? So what happens? I'm like, oh, well, it's only the first time it's ever happened. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe all the things, right? I know he's sketchy. I know he's lying, right? But sometimes we know, and this is such a basic example, and we just choose to not to talk ourselves out of it anyway, right? And I think that every human being can really actually just put in a little time thinking about different moments in their life and actually start to remember, like, did I have a gut feeling about this at the time, or did I not? Or, was there a time I listened to that inner knowing and I was right? And we start thinking about those times, and it starts to build up our own trust in ourselves over time. And for me, this was a huge way that I was able to keep going. You mentioned one thing that I remember, Tom, after, we were a couple years into our business, and I had been sending our product out to all the retailers and saying, hey, I want to show models that actually have skin challenges like I do. And that had never been done before, right? And I wanted to do all these things, and they were all telling me no, and it's not the right fit. And I knew my product was really good. I learned the hard lesson a lot of entrepreneurs learn, that you can have a great product or a great course or a great service but that's not enough. Like, people have to know it exists, right? And when you have no money and no ad budget, that's really hard. And this is 2008, 2009, 2010. YouTube wasn't huge yet. So no one had gone out there and said, oh, instead of overly photoshopped, perfect skin models, let's show real people with real skin challenges and all ages and sizes and skin tones. And that's what I had this vision for, because that's what I was, and we created a product that was so good. And then after all these rejections from all the department stores, all the beauty stores saying, no, thank you, it's a pass, your product will never sell, those kind of images don't work. I had one store tell me women will only buy from an aspirational image of beauty they'll never be able to look like. If they can actually look that way, they won't buy it. And it was just like over and over and over rejection. And I'll never forget this one moment, just to share as an example, because it helped me develop my intuition muscle so strongly. But we had gotten an inbound call from a potential investor, and they were a really well-known private equity company, and they invested in a lot of consumer products in the grocery stores, like household names that we buy. They loved our product, and so we started taking meetings with them, and I was so freaking excited, because I felt like, oh my gosh, if they invest in us, then maybe they'll use their leverage to get us into these retailers, and also I won't go bankrupt, and all those things. And there's that. And so we did meetings. We started the diligence phase. We presented product pipelines, all that stuff. And it got down to the last meeting, and my husband and I flew there for the meeting. And it was the head guy. He was standing about 3 feet from me. And I thought it was going to be like the best day of my life, right? And I'll never forget, he was 3 feet away, and he says to me, I just don't think women, well, he said it's a no, we're going to pass on investing in IT cosmetics. And like, I'd heard no thousands of times, right? So I'm like devastated, but I'm like, okay, can you share why? You know, because feedback is usually a gift. And he says, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I said, yes. And he literally was 3 feet from me. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember when he said that to me, a bunch of things happened. The first thing was I remember feeling like my whole body fled with like a lifetime of body issues, body doubt and self-doubt. And I felt all that. So it kind of felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye, talking to him. I never felt anger toward him. I felt hurt and crushed. But I also got this feeling. I'll never forget this, Tom. I'll never forget this the rest of my life. I got this feeling, like literally in my gut, like a knowing he's wrong. Even though I was still doubting myself, even though I had dealt with like a lifetime of body doubt, I got this feeling he's wrong. And I remember that feeling because I remember then for a few years wondering, like, am I right or is he right? I would still doubt myself, right? And I went out in my car and I cried. And I had to figure out, how do I turn down the volume in my own head and not replay those hurtful words over and over and over? But I also remember that feeling I got. And this is a big business thing, not to be off topic, but like one of the things I did do right was I never took rejection personally in business, right? I always figured out how to go, okay, like if this is a game of chess, maybe we will partner one day. So I'm just going to pretend we are with every retailer, and I'm just going to keep sending them product and keep sending them updates and keep telling them I can't wait till I'm in your store, no matter how bad that rejection hurt. And in his case, what I realized also was, oh, okay, the reason I'm creating this company, I want to try to shift culture and beauty. I want to try to use different images of models. And he's literally passing on investing in my company because he is just as much influenced by a lifetime of seeing beauty images too. So he believes also, whether he realizes it or not, you have to look a certain way to sell product. And the last thing I'll say about that is I do believe in that famous saying that like rejection's God's protection, right? And you could say rejection's the universe's protection. I do believe in sayings like that. And when you fast forward 6 years later, the day that L'Oreal bought IT Cosmetics, it was all over the Wall Street Journal homepage. It was everywhere online because they're a public company. So that means for them, they decided to release the purchase price, everything. I got an email from that guy, from that investor. I got an email that day that said, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I was wrong. But the other thing, when I talk about like rejection's God's protection, I really believe that because even though we don't see it at the time and it doesn't make sense at the time, but like I was so desperate, Tom, I would have probably given him the majority of the company for like almost no money. And because he didn't believe in us and because so many people rejected us along the way, by the time we did sell our business to L'Oreal, we're still the largest shareholders. So it was like, there's so many situations like that. But anyhow, that deep knowing, that knowing he's wrong, that's an example of, okay, looking back over time, where did I make mistakes and where did I do things right? And then we refine that muscle of learning, oh yeah, learning to trust ourselves.
There's so much in that is extraordinary. We're now going to test my abilities as an interviewer to see if I can tease out some of the things that you talk about in the book to put a capstone on this idea of training your intuition. So I have a deep and abiding fear of being spiritual entertainment. People will be moved by you. They will be moved by your story. But if they're very careful and they pay close attention, it will change how they move through the world, certainly as a person just pursuing goals, but potentially even as somebody who wants to start their own business.
What was the mission?
Yeah, so, our entire mission started with this season of what I thought was setback in my life. And, my whole life, I wanted to share other people's stories with the world. So when I was a little girl, I would watch Oprah in my living room, and I was eventually working in what I thought was my dream job, anchoring the news and sharing other people's stories. And I got a skin condition called rosacea, which for me, it's hereditary. There's no cure for it. But for me, it gets really, really bad. So I get red bumps that feel like sandpaper all over my face. And I would be anchoring the news live. I'd be in the middle of the newscast, and I'd hear in my earpiece from the producer while I was anchoring the news live, I would hear, "There's something on your face. You got to wipe it off. You got to wipe it off." And I knew there was nothing I could wipe off. And so it started this sort of season of what I thought was setback. And I think Joel Osteen says it best, where he says our setbacks are often our setups for what we're supposed to do. And we just don't always see it at the time. And so just by nature of trying to solve my own problems, I started trying to find makeup that would work. And I tried everything from the cheapest to the most expensive that was out there. And I couldn't find anything that would work for me. And I had this big kind of moment, this dilemma in my own career, where I had this feeling, right? Sometimes things just start with this gut feeling, where I was like, if I can figure out how to create a product that works for me, I bet it's going to help a whole lot of other people. So that was what my gut told me. But then my head said, oh no, but you're in your dream job. And also, you don't know anyone in the beauty industry or that space at all. And then of course, all the self-doubt stuff that we all have, right? With thoughts like, you're not qualified. Are you smart enough? Do you have what it takes? You don't have enough money, all those things. You don't have enough connections. So I went through this phase where I kept having this gut feeling like I was supposed to do it, even though it didn't make sense. And it's interesting because I look back now at so many of the key decisions that changed everything, that helped us break through with a business into a crowded industry. It's also a lot of moments where I just chose to trust that intuition over the lack of proof of success around me, or over my own self-doubt, or all of that. So anyhow, I'm in this moment where I'm like, okay, I just had this realization, Scott, that like sometimes in life, knowing when to let go of a dream is as important also as knowing when to go after one. And I made the decision to trust myself. And I was just like, I just can't shake this feeling. I'm supposed to do this. And so on my honeymoon flight to South Africa, my husband and I both wrote the business plan, came back, quit our jobs, went all in. And the mission, I would say there's so many things that I did wrong on the journey, right? Messes, as you would say. And I talk about all of those for the first time ever, because I think it's so important. I think when we are able to really reflect and dissect, how did an idea break through a crowded industry, become $1 billion company? I think sharing all the parts that went wrong is really important too. So I do that in the book as well. But when we got back, we quit our jobs, went all in on this brand. And I had this big mission, right? You have interviewed so many thought leaders that talk about identifying your why as a business, as an individual with a goal. And, you know, of all the things that I did wrong, which were many in the journey, one of the things that I did right was from the beginning, like I could have had a why that was, oh, I want to solve my own skin problems, or, oh, I want to help so many other women who have the same challenges and can't find makeup that works for them. And both of those things would sound really great and be great whys. But what I know now is those wouldn't have been deep enough to keep me going and keep all of our eventual 1,000+ employees focused, because those whys weren't actually deep and meaningful enough. And one of the things that I did right, that I really encourage everyone to do as a leader, as an individual human being with goals, is, you know, I took this why and I peeled back the layers of it and went really deep. And I did that from the beginning, almost to the why beneath the why. And for me, here's what I realized, Scott, is, wow, why can't I find makeup that works for me, right? Why can't I find a product that works for me? I realized my whole life, every time I had seen TV commercials or ads in magazines, I never saw anyone that, you know, had skin problems like I did. I always saw, you know, models with flawless skin. And so, which when you see those ads, you don't even know if they're really wearing the product they're selling. You don't know any of that, right? But when I peeled back the layers, I realized, oh, my whole life, seeing these ads of what the world tells me beauty is, I always aspired to look like them. Like I loved those ads as a little girl, but they also always kind of made me feel deep down inside like I wasn't enough. And when I realized that, I created this mission around the company, not just to create great products that work and do what they say, but to actually try to shift culture in the beauty industry around how the beauty industry defines beauty altogether. And so I had this vision from the beginning, because this wasn't being done at the time. What if I put real people as models, all ages, shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges, show my own what the world tells me are flaws, right? My own bright red rosacea, and take my own makeup off and show how the product works. What if I can call all of these real people beautiful and mean it? And what if I can help shift the way the entire beauty industry sees beauty for every little girl out there who is about to start doubting herself when she sees the ads and the way it's been done, and for every grown woman who still does. So it was this deep why. And one thing I just want to share on the topic of leadership is identifying like the why beneath the why. I think is so important, because I think a lot of people stop at a why that sounds good or looks good on their mission statement wall, but really going deep with it and seeing if you can peel back the layers more. What I didn't know at the time was having that deep why would help sustain me during what was going to be 3 years of not being able to pay myself. 3 years of hundreds of no's, right? Because when we finally poured all the money we had into creating a product that worked, I just thought, oh, it's going to sell. Everyone's going to love it. And then what I encountered was all of the retailers in the beauty space who I love them, have shopped in them my whole life. All of them said no, or that, no one will buy makeup from models that aren't aspirational traditionally, or change the packaging so it's more luxurious. It was no after no after no after no for 3 years. And we got down to no money. And, I had this really deep, authentic, foundational why for why I was doing what I was doing, that I knew it needed to change. I knew the industry needed to change, and it helped me keep going. But also every time one of those retailers would say, change who you are and what you're doing if you want to get into our stores. I was super clear on the vision, and I know you can't fake authenticity. So in those years of constant rejection and having that why beneath the why really helped me. It helped me I leaned on it every time I would get knocked down. I needed to get back up. And then eventually, without skipping over a million stories, but just to share this part, when we grew to over 1,000 employees, and we eventually grew to the largest, right now, as you and I are speaking, It Cosmetics is the largest luxury makeup company in the country. But that why beneath the why, I eventually had it on little frames on every single employee's desk. Some people had it as their screensaver. It became this guiding force on how we make decisions across departments, whether it's, do we launch a new product or not, or do we have a certain messaging, or how do we build our teams out? So super important part in terms of the mission for everything. And that was really foundational from the very, very beginning.
Jamie, you are a superb storyteller. Your positivity and inspiration is contagious. I love this quote from Joel Osteen. You say, sometimes our setbacks become our set-ups. I've also heard it, sometimes a disappointment leads into an appointment.
What did you believe was possible then? And did you learn to trust your gut then? Like, when did you start learning to trust your intuition, to hear those voices? Because I get impulses too. I get hits of what I'm supposed to do. And I think some people don't get them. So you share a lot of tips in the book, by the way. So we're not gonna be able to share everything on this interview. Read the book. Jamie shares a ton of tips in this book to help you on your journey. If you're a small business, her advice is incredible. If you're growing your business, if you're a big business, if you're a leader, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to be more creative, all of the chapters in that book give you nuggets of wisdom and advice and tips to help you on your journey. It's like really is for everyone, just so you know. So you're going to get some tips, but Jamie, in terms of that intuition and gut, tell us about that Denny's waitress that you were and what was possible then to you.
Yeah. So I've always felt, and I've always felt deep down inside like I was destined to serve in a big way or do something that impacted other people on all of our own journey. I always had that inkling, didn't know what it was. And working as a Denny's waitress, this is so funny, working as a Denny's waitress. Oh my gosh. So the Denny, and I was working to try and save up for school and all that, and pay my way through school. And Denny's, it's so funny how so many things teach us lessons, right? So I won't get into this too much, but like the Denny's I worked at, the kitchen was a mess in the sense that they would take an hour to get pancakes out sometimes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are getting mad and they're leaving because it's taking an hour to get pancakes. And I'm not getting a tip. And I really need a tip because I'm trying to pay for through school. And so I learned to talk to people and try to be like, and try to just connect with them and ask about their stories and that whole thing. And it probably planted a seed in me of understanding the importance of operations of a business and the right operational infrastructure. So even as a, you know, in that whole different industry as a Denny's waitress, I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right, of where we're going to be. But, you know, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well. Or, oh, I decided to go against everyone else. I trusted my gut and here's what happened, right? And I think for all of us, it's every area of life. I mean, this is something a lot of your community might relate to, is like, or not, but if you've ever dated a sketchy guy or you have a friend where you're just like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. Something's not adding up. We kind of know it, right? Like so many people can hopefully relate to this at some point in their life, but they've dated someone where they're like, I don't really believe him that his phone just broke and that he just like disappeared for it, right? I don't think he, you know, and you can choose, we all choose like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to stay in love. Or, you know what? Like, okay, I'm done. Like we all know. And I feel like we continue building those experiences in life. And then we look back on them and it's like, now I'm able, you know, looking back on so much of this journey, I'm able to really know that some of my biggest mistakes and misjudgments and miscalculations came when I went against that inkling inside, right? And I trusted people that are touted visionaries or experts. And it's good to trust experts and visionaries, except if your deep gut inkling goes against it, because knowing that you stayed to that through line of authenticity for you and what you're called to do is so important. And learning how to tune in and hear that can literally change the whole course of your life. And one big example of that is probably one of the greatest business lessons I've ever learned and life lessons. And it came down to this moment where after 3 years of hearing no's, and by the way, John, at one point, I think it was 2 years into our business, I actually was able to get, and just to share a scrappy tip for anyone out there, like really building their business who can't afford to hire people, I was like emailing everyone on LinkedIn. I would find anyone that worked at the company. I would just try to get in some way, send them products, ask them to, you know, and I'd finally like hustled my way into a guy named Alan Burke, who was the head of Olive Beauty at QVC. He had built this multi-billion dollar beauty industry there, department there. And I got through to his assistant and I begged her to like have him look at our product and get us meetings and all those things in front of the buyers. And anyways, long story short, I got a call saying he is going to take a call with me and he's reviewed the products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this head of everything, Alan Burke, if he's going to spend his precious time like calling me, it's going to be good. Right. And I was so excited. And I was pacing around waiting for the call in our office, which was our living room. And Paula was there and I was like, I was freaking out. He called. And right when I answered the phone, obviously I was like I mean, I didn't know what we were going to do, right? We were down to no money. I was freaking out. And I said, okay, to my head, I'm like, they're lucky to have us. He's lucky to get us, like all these things, right? Pumping myself up. And I got on the phone and he said, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke from QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to talk to you and this whole thing. And anyways, he got right to the point and he said, we've reviewed your products with all the buyers here in the beauty department. And it's unanimous that it's a no. We're going to pass on your company. You're not the right fit for QVC and you're not the right fit for our customers, but we wish you well. And I was like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I just tried to pour into another pitch. And he thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no, got off the phone. Okay. So then I cried myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. If you've ever had bad news and you like wake up in the morning and you hope it was a dream and you're like, oh, it wasn't, right? It was like that day after day after day. So fast forward another year, we're at a big beauty show and one of the QVC hosts tried our product. There were 6,000 women there. She tried our product and said, you need to be on QVC. She told the buyer, we got one shot. We got our first big yes, but what it meant, and this is one of the greatest life lessons and business lessons I've ever learned as it pertains to trusting your gut and staying authentic to who you are. We got one shot on QVC. And here's what it meant. We got a 10-minute window to go live in front of 100 million homes and sell our product. But what it also meant was, and at the time we were selling only 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Fulfilling them out of our living room, driving to the post office. So we're only selling 2 to 3 orders a day, barely staying alive. They ordered over 6,000 units of our concealer to sell in just a 10-minute window in order to hit their sales goal or not come back. And it was a consignment deal, which meant we weren't paid for any of it. And whatever sold, we got paid for, but whatever didn't sell would get shipped back to us. So it's like never, as an entrepreneur, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, we were like out of options. And it just felt like, you know what, let's just go all in. So we said yes. We applied for SBA loans, and I think the first 22 banks said no. Bank number 23 gave us an SBA loan to cover just the manufacturing costs of those 6,000 units. And so literally everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week early. And you know how a lot of times athletes will envision themselves on the podium or landing the triple axel or scoring the touchdown. Like you visualize stuff. I flew out there a week early and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And I just started envisioning everything. Like I was trying to pretend I was an athlete. And I was like visualizing everything I could, like the sold out sign coming up across the screen. And here's the moment that became hard. We hired third-party consultants that are amazing at helping people succeed selling on television. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have any shot at success, you need to use this type of model, which was the same type of model I'd seen in magazines my whole life. You need to do your sell this way. And I would argue with them. I'd say, okay, but that's not why I created the product. And also, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national TV so I can prove live the product works? And like, I would say like, oh my gosh, if I'm sitting at home and I am 70 years old, or I have hyperpigmentation or this skin challenge or this skin tone or this skin problem, if I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know it's going to work for me? And like, we would argue, and they wanted us to win. They wanted the best for us. They're like, listen, this is the best advice we can give you. Here's what you need to do. And like, one thing I'll say is, had I realized that if you're ever going to do anything novel or new, or even it's an idea that's been done a million times, but it's your take on it, of course, experts aren't going to think it's going to work, because subconsciously they only think things are going to work that they've already seen proven work, right? And I didn't know that for a long time, and they mean so well, but they're seeing it. Even though a lot of them are visionaries, they're only able to see what you're doing through their own lens of experience. And so anyways, long story short, I didn't have a chance to do it both ways. It was like everything was on the line. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to stick with authenticity in my mission. But then when you're in a moment where everything's on the line and you know you might lose your entire company, it's really hard to just tune in and trust your gut, right? Put your own gut instinct on a pedestal instead of the expert's advice. And I sat in that car for a week and I stared at the front door of the QVC building. And I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I would either walk out bankrupt or with like my whole life changed. And the more I prayed about it, I would sit there in that car, literally crying, trying to like God, take this from me because it feels so heavy, and just tell me what to do. And it came down to a couple of things. I imagined who my customer was, and I would just kind of imagine who she is watching at home. And for some reason, I kept imagining like a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was like too busy to remember she mattered and remember she's beautiful and that she's enough. And I just remember this moment where I was like, you know what? I would rather, if she's going to bless me with 5 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her look up on her TV screen and see me showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather that happen than like me sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like, I knew what I had to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And when the 10-minute clock started, we went live on the air. And by the way, John, when you probably know this, I didn't know this until I got there. When the 10-minute clock starts, you don't just get 10 minutes for sure. If you're a minute or two in and you're not selling enough, your clock cuts and it jumps down to 2 minutes. And you just like lost 6 minutes. And it's the most stressful thing and most high pressure thing, right? Because they don't mess around. Like you hit sales goals or that's it, which is any business. But so the 10-minute clock goes up. It's like 9:59, 9:58.
Jamie, I got to stop you there for a second.
Yeah,
I want people to realize this, like your future depends on this moment.
Do you believe that your optimism allows this all to work? Because if you are looking at losses as in, well, this was meant to be part of my journey and this scar is actually attractive, because that's how I think about it. I think about all those losses as scars and like that scar giving you character and that's attractive. Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think though that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right?
Yeah.
And so in the beginning where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out. I'm saying I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory. Listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're gonna have the New York Jets one day. I know all that, but I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey of that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So and maybe this will make sense, because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment, Gary.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, okay, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. Oh, I see. So what I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as, so I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I've been thinking about,
you.
you see where I'm going? Because I could almost feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you, sister. Because like this isn't why it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like, for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people, so I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I 1,000,000,000% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief. Same thing. Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing, and then I want to share one quick story with you too, that hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut, and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say, when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like, we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had a, and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just like shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited.
Okay.
Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my friends that were girls that were dating guys that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is 1,000,000 miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that need it.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, you know, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, you know, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? If you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't
Because
agree more.
yeah, because they don't yet
I couldn't
deep
agree
down
more. Yeah,
inside
I get
believe,
it.
yeah, that
It's what
they deserve
it's what
more.
and also people value different things through their life.
Mm,
You know, one of the
yeah.
things, you know, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress and buy products at the department stores or in
What year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, and maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just gonna sell. If it's that good, it's just gonna sell. And then I didn't realize it would be the hard. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, you know, Walmart, Walgreens, and you know, Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it or banner ads or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do is Gary V's easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through, because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
They're like, what's this Washington State thing? Like you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, you know, I would pitch the product, and, you know, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, you know, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that like even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And and by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC, because then I could actually like show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. and this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like I kept having this feeling, and every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call, I'd finally get, like, I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I like poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember like crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants, and I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges, and I showed my own bare face and all the things that had never been done before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100 million homes.
You knew,
and that,
you knew the truth, and your heart would win, not, students telling you what to do.
Yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson, that like I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. But I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
Love that.
Right?
Love that. Listen,
always.
I mean, you are preaching.
I want to kind of circle back here, because one of the things that I kept getting out of the book, and for those of you listening, this is actually the first physical book that I have read in so long. We have babies about the same. I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. And yeah, so, being pregnant, I had a pandemic baby. It's like Audible is the thing. And I said, no, I'm going to get the physical copy. And I'm so glad I did, because of the pictures that are in the squirrel picture. Oh, I read that at like the perfect time. But if you guys have the Audible, get the physical book. Like, it is so worth it to be able, and then the beautiful picture you shared with your daughter, like that, there are just so many moments that it's so open. Like, I feel like I know you. I've never met you in my life. And I'm going through this book and like, wow, like she really just bared her soul, which is so beautiful. But what really came through in the book is how driven you are by your why, and this why to change the beauty industry, to change the way that, to really make real women the star of the show. And I'm curious, now that you've sold your company, now that you've become a mom, now that you're in a different place in your life, are you still driven by that same why, or has it kind of expanded in a way now that you're an author and so on?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think too, the power of your why. And one of the things I talk about in here, that I'm so excited you're doing a book club and everything else, because I think doing the work of the why, but then peeling back the layers and going so much deeper on the why beneath the why. I think that so many people, whether they are estheticians or spa owners or launching their own product line, or a person that just has a goal in their goal journal, so many people will come up with a why, if they've even done that, right? A lot of people don't do that. They'll see companies have a big why or a mission statement, but then for their own goals, they don't attach a why to it. And I think it's so important to do that, because it makes us so much less likely to give up. When we have a really strong why, we can lean on it when times get tough. And one thing I just want to share, especially for your community, is the importance of not just having a why that sounds really good, that when you share it with other people, they're like, that's amazing. Often that why still isn't deep enough to make you not quit when times get tough, or to, keep going when you feel like no one else is believing in you. And, for my why, I could have just said, oh, I want to create a product that solves my own problems, or I want to create products that help so many other people. And that would have been true. It would have been true But one thing, and again, I did so many things wrong, as you know, that I talk about in the book. One of the things that I did right was I peeled back the layers on the why, like to the why beneath the why. And this is what I want to challenge everyone to do as well, to something that was really deep. And for me, you know, I had realized my whole life, I had seen these kind of commercials on television and in beauty ads and of what beauty, what the world told me beautiful looked like. And I always aspired to look like that. I loved it. But as a little girl, I realized, oh, wow, they always kind of made me feel like I wasn't enough. And you know, when I grew up, when I eventually got rosacea and all the things that I was like, why can't I find makeup that works? And then I realized, oh, I've never seen a model with rosacea saying, hey, this is great. And so I had this deep why that came from a lifetime of, I guess, the feeling of not enoughness, where I realized, oh, let me not just create a beauty company, but you know, put real women and men, all different ages, shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges, call them beautiful and mean it, for every little girl out there. Like maybe I can do this in time to prevent other little girls out there who are about to see these images and start doubting themselves, right? And help shift perspective on what is beauty for every adult who still struggles with that. And so that why was really deep for me. And I think that, you know, for everyone in your community, whether their hopes and goals are to, you know, work as an esthetician and just feel joy in their job for the next 40 years, or maybe their dream is to start their own product line or their own, you know, expand their spa business, whatever it is. I just think peeling back the layers, because a lot of times people will have a why that's like, oh, I want to help people, or I want to
make women look and feel their best.
Yes, I want to make women look and feel their best. That's a great one. I want to pay for my kids' college. It could be any of these things. And they sound so great when you share them with other people.
You
gotta go deeper. And it doesn't mean it's a different why. It means take that why and start going deeper, because I feel like we have to be doing something that's truly meaningful to us, that's so much bigger than ourselves, to be able to lean on and keep going. And I think that's so important. And that's one of the things that helped me keep going during all the years of rejection. It was tough. And anyone in your community who is starting a product business, I'm excited for them to read the book, because I talk also just about, you know, like all the scrappy things and the unglamorous things and the things that what do you do when people copy your product? What do you do when, you know, all those kind of things. But just having that why to lean back on, I think is so important. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves for like, what's your purpose? And I think we can have several purposes. And I think that they can continue to evolve. You know, my whole life, I thought I was going to, I would watch Oprah growing up, and I thought, oh, one day I'm going to, you know, share other people's stories with the world and have a talk show. And I was working in my dream job, I thought, as a news anchor. And, but when I got rosacea and when I started realizing there's this need in the beauty industry for products and a whole new message, I had to know, I learned that knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one. And my purpose shifted in that moment. And I chose to kind of trust myself in that. And, you know, now as a mom, definitely, like definitely. And also just, you know, I had a moment, I don't talk about this in the book at all, but just to share with you, I had a moment about 2 years ago where I'd all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, I was in my living room for years. We built to bigger offices, over 1,000 employees, sold to L'Oreal. And I was sitting in this corner office that was brand new. It was my first time sitting in this brand new corner office at the It Cosmetics headquarters. And our new offices were over 60,000 square feet. And my office overlooked the whole Manhattan skyline. And I had this huge bathroom. I don't know why I just felt like a bathroom was a big deal. Like I have a bathroom. And it was like an office bigger than almost any home I'd ever lived in. And I sat there in this moment knowing a couple things. And I just was like sobbing in my office going, wow, this is so beautiful. The art on the wall, where am I? This is not how I was raised. But also, wow, like I made it. Like that dream became this reality. I felt like I was in the movie Devil Wears Prada looking around going, where am I? And I could have stayed there, right? But but the mission and the purpose and everything that I had dreamed of, L'Oreal's done such an amazing job at building that out. And, you know, I stayed on as CEO for 3 years post-acquisition, and we doubled the size of the company the first 2 years post-acquisition. The team is incredible. And I sat there in that moment going, oh, wow, right now I could start doing all the cool stuff. Like right now I could start, I'm in this office that the world tells me is what significance looks like. I could now go to all the fancy parties. I could do all these things, but I had this, I'm on the inside, but then I had this feeling of, oh, but you know, you're supposed to serve in a whole different way that impacts people. You're supposed to share the stuff you've gone through to help other people. Yeah. And I knew it. And it was weird because a lot of people are scared to leave the things that make us feel important or significant. And I knew if I stayed there, it wasn't where I was supposed to be anymore. And it was really hard. I sobbed my eyes out sitting in that office, and I made the decision to step away, and it was really hard, but it's because I felt, to your question, I felt my why and my purpose was transitioning to something new. And I knew if I ever wrote a book, I'd want to donate 100% of the proceeds, which I am, to Feeding America and Together Rising. But I also know that when we really share our stories, you know, that's when we all come together and get stronger and rise higher and go, oh, I don't want to make that mistake. Or, oh, that's how Jamie handled that person telling her she's not enough. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to let anyone look me in the eye.
Relatable. The book is so relatable. And I mean, you know, we both have suffered miscarriage, and just sharing that, I think for so many women, there's a shame around that. And there's a scary piece around that. And I remember when I told my community, I felt like I had to tell them because I was just going underground. I needed time to heal and couldn't show up in the same way. Yeah. And I received at least 50 emails from women sharing their story and saying thank you and for sharing. And I realized, like, on such a small level, just by me sharing that I went through that and the pain, and that, like, I'm okay and you can keep going and it's normal and there's nothing wrong with you. And so when I was reading that section of your book, I'm like, this is incredible. Just this alone, sharing that, like, this happens and you're okay and you're normal and you can keep going and you can be a huge success and you can have a family, was such a beautiful piece too for women to hear, because that can be devastating. That can stop you from going after your why, you know? So such a big piece.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really hard when we're in the midst of struggle and setback. And I, you know, just to share one thing, I did this kind of big book launch event this week where I invited a couple friends to speak. One of them was Robin Roberts of Good Morning America. And she shared something. You just reminded me of that. I want to share in case this also as a service inspires, you know, your whole community too. We were talking about our greatest accomplishments and things like that. And she said something, and, you know, Robin has won every award you can possibly win. And she's in the Broadcast Hall of Fame, and she still wakes up all of America, Good Morning America, every single day. She's won every sports award, everything. And she said the things that fulfill her, the things that she is the most proud of in her life, aren't anything she's accomplished. It's the things she's overcome. So the things that literally bring her the most joy, most fulfillment, most that she's most proud of are the things she's overcome.
The biggest opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And just, completely. And then just knowing we're strong enough to get through them and then can be there. Like, I'm sure you're sharing your story, you know, helps everyone else process their own experiences, especially people that have been keeping them to themselves or not really sure or feeling alone in them, right? Feeling like it's just them or something's wrong with them. And, you know, when I was I went through a decade of not being able to carry pregnancy to full term, and had several different times where that was really challenging. And I was hiding it for a long time. None of my employees knew. And we were doing fertility treatments and all the things. And, you know, I felt like my body was betraying me. Like my body was failing me, and like, you know, what was supposed to happen wasn't happening. And there's so many emotions that come with that. And, you know, I had also found out by surprise I was adopted, and there's so many things.
You guys have to get the book.
What did you learn in this process? Like, if you had like 2 things that came to mind for these folks of like manifesting a huge visionary event, like what 2 things come to mind? Like, I was able to manifest this because these 2 things. What do you think comes to mind?
Oh my gosh, Brendan. Well, it's wild to answer that because I don't know if I've processed it all. Do you know what I mean?
I know you haven't.
Yeah, it's like happening in real time. So you guys, right before Brendan and I just hopped on live, we're in the room, we're in a filming room right now, and with other people here. My publisher from Simon & Schuster was just on the phone, and we're processing everything happening live. But I think that, you know, what I would say is just, it all, you know, it starts with believing that it's possible, and being willing to put yourself out there. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit with just being willing to try something. I had no idea how this would go. It was my first ever live event that I've ever done.
Show up every day.
Yeah.
She showed up for her belief and her dream every day. And now she's, you know, the #1 best new release on Amazon. So already a #1 bestseller, her first book. She pulled off her first event yesterday. 200,000 people watched.
Yeah.
So why can't you dream? Why can't you try something you've never done before? Why can't you say, you know what? I have this feeling in my heart, and that feeling in your heart has been sown there. She and I both believe in a creator. We believe in God, and there's some divine reason you've been gifted with all of those impulses you have, those dreams. They've been I always say they've been sown into your heart. And if they're there, follow them, work for them, ask for them, dream for them. And if you do it over and over and over for a decade, like she has in, you know, she did IT Cosmetics, and then for the last 2 years. So yesterday was the culmination of 2 years.
Yeah.
And not just her, you know, it's cool. It's not just her last 2 years. It's Dean's team mastering the model. It's Sage teams mastering the production. It's Tony building the studio. Like all these serendipitous things had to have happened across 4 or 5 teams and across 19 speakers. All these things happening in all of our lives all had to come together to one day. And it only happens because every one of them is moving their lives forward.
Yeah.
And so you want to be around people. This is why we talk about Growth Day so much. You want to be around that spirit of people who are absolutely growing, moving towards their dreams. Even if we can talk about discouragement and we can have empathy and we can be like, oh, life is hard and it's a struggle. We can honor the struggle and just keep moving things forward. Because think about, if all those people hadn't been moving their lives forward in the last 2 years, the innovation required to pull off yesterday would not have happened.
Yeah.
Right? So it all came, it's what Paulo Coelho, one of my mentors and great friends, he wrote the book The Alchemist, best-selling, the most followed author in the world online, and the 5th best-selling book of all time, The Alchemist. Here's what he said in The Alchemist. He says, when you pursue your dream, all the world conspires to support it.
So good.
And so you think she put this book out there, she put this event out there, and all the world, the last 2 years, is conspiring. Isn't that beautiful?
So beautiful. So that just asks, that reminds me. So what is your dream right now? Like you're joining us live right now on the Growth Day Morning Show. What is something on your heart that if you just put it out there, if you put it out there more boldly, if you take that step, if you make that ask, if you ask someone to show up for help, how is the world then going to conspire, right? All the world conspires for you. And
you show up each day. And you work with faith.
Yeah.
How many times was this event in your mind and this book launch in your mind a train wreck? In the last 4 weeks, how many times did you cry? Did you get overwhelmed? I don't want you all to see this beautiful makeup she puts on and this beautiful soul she is
I've taken off on the morning show. I've taken my makeup off on the Growth Day Morning Show.
I just want you all to listen very closely. What you saw yesterday didn't feel that smooth in the manifesting of the dream.
Yeah, so good.
Right? The output. No one sees the hours and the tears and the frustration and the late night phone calls and texts, right? That we all do. She does, I do, like we commiserate together. And then when you show up, though, it's game time. You show up, it's your Super Bowl. You're ready. You're going to deliver. Like yesterday, she just delivered for 14 hours. 14 hours. So I just want you to understand, it's okay that you look like a hot mess right now. It's okay that yesterday you cried because you felt so far away from the dream.
Yeah.
Do you show up every day with faith and work for that momentum, work for that growth, work for that contribution, that difference, that impact, that change in your life?
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's because for years, all these people were working with faith each day to move their lives forward, that then the serendipitous thing could happen. But pull one of them out. If I hadn't, like years ago, had to figure out the 7-day live launch, that is like the model we all use for challenges now. If Tony didn't pivot from live events in the pandemic, if Dean Graziosi didn't pivot from TV to online, if all the speakers hadn't at some point in their life pivoted from doing their one job to I want to share a message. If all that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's you that this is one reason you have to, in some way, in my opinion, you got to believe in a God or a higher order or some grand design that's so beyond us, because that seems so magical. Yesterday was a 14-hour movie, and it was a movie of possibility. I hope you watch it. You can still sign up to go see the replay. Yeah. And if you go to believeit.com, is that right? Is that where she's at?
Go to believeit.com, becomingunstoppable.com, in the Facebook group there. Yeah, the replays are up right now. They're going away. Yeah, and you know it was something that was so special. By the way, one thing Brendan just said too is like the messy part, right? I think that's so important, because I think all of us sometimes feel alone during that messy part, or like it's just us. There were so many messy parts, so many details, so much hard work, so many tears that went into yesterday's event, but also that went into the book launching today, my first ever book launching today.
So good. One more question, then I'm going to go in kind of the lightning round. We'll just fire a bunch at you. So from all measures, you're incredibly successful, but a lot of people don't succeed when they're successful. They fall apart, they burn out, it goes to their head. What advice do you have to people who are succeeding to stay successful at what matters most?
This is something that I continue to struggle with, to be totally honest. I think that as someone who's I've always felt like God has put a great calling in my life. And I don't believe we're born to compete with anyone else. I believe we're here to compete with what we know we're capable of becoming. And I struggle every day feeling like I'm nowhere close to becoming the potential God gave me. And so to this day, I have to challenge myself to work less, to stop thinking about how I'm going to serve and impact obsessively and actually enjoy my daughter singing to the Elmo song. I need to intentionally be present with my husband at dinner when I am tempted to daydream about creating, building, serving, and impacting. And it is a daily struggle for me. So, and maybe other people listening can relate to that as well. But it's something that I'm just being really intentional, because I can look back and go, okay, I've achieved all of these incredible things that they only write about in movies. And yet the moments that fill my soul the most aren't usually those achievements, right? They're the times when, my daughter was born, or, I helped, but they're also, let me say this, and maybe you have these moments too, like just this morning when I get a letter from someone who says like, I read Believe It, or I, whatever, and I decided to trust myself and it worked. Or things like that. Like those are the moments that fill my soul. So, I'm trying to be intentional about doing both, about being someone who I feel is called to serve in a great way, but also trying to not look back at life and say, gosh, I forgot to enjoy it.
That's so good. And you use the word 3 or 4 times, the word intentional. I think anybody who's a high performer like you, and the vast majority of our community, they're visionaries. They're growing. They're stretching themselves. we don't want to be successful just in the business and not be successful at home. And it's what happens in the home. It's what happens in your heart. That's where the true lasting measure of success is. And so congratulations if you can do both. But if we're going to do one, we don't need to sell the business for $1.2 billion and lose everything else that matters even more. We want to really be intentional as you are. And it's hard. It takes work, because when you can do a lot, you tend to want to do a lot. But you don't want to do a lot of what doesn't matter as much as a lot of what does matter most. And I congratulate you and Paulo on being great at both, producing great value and staying centered, or working to stay centered at the things that matter most.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Jamie Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.